Well, I've been lucky enough to grab half an hour of Johnny's time before he goes off and does a talk at the Broadfield. So, and I thought we'd talk about your book, Johnny, which has been out now for how long?
Been out since October the 18th.
October
Finished the writing probably June last year, and then it went through all the photography and, you know, ballyhoo getting it published.
But why? Why did you write a book, Johnny?
Well, I knew I'd forget about loads of it, and it was a special time in climbing. It was the end of the beginning, in the beginning of the last period, the end. So, you know, I think that now things have turned scientific and very physical. Some of the belief systems that were around then, that you could sort of magic your way at routes, now seems kind of a bit silly and fanciful. And I just wanted to write something which sort of captured that John Allen, Johnny Woodward kind of possibility, Martin Boyson's sort of, that it was about cragsmanship and solving the crags movement well. You know, technique with a big T basically, and also about how sort of it was about how much you kind of loved doing it that made you good, and the fact that you did it a lot. I thought those sort of factors would change in time. There's certain things I wanted to write about, so I tried to write about them many times, and kind of was really bunged up. It's almost like I had a hairball of stuff to get out, and whether or not it's still a hairball by the time it's on the page is up to other people's you know, thoughts. But I do like writing. I mean, when you get something right, you think you've captured something in it. You know, there's certain parts of the book where I feel like I caught the experience really well. Like when we were climbing in the Gwynant with my old friends in recent years, I felt like that was a genuine piece of writing that came straight out.
I think this brings me on to an interesting point, because I think there are certain passages in the book which are as good a description of the physical and mental aspects of climbing as I've ever seen.
Thank you.
What I'm interested in is, do you really remember all those climbs in that much detail, or do you just make it up?
Difficult to tell where the boundary lies between you know, making it up, and the good thing is I can remember the climbs, so that was like a skeleton on which I could hang the descriptions. Some of them, which one are you talking about? 'Cause that's interesting. It'll actually give me something to get my teeth into.
I was thinking actually there was a couple of examples. I think some of the slate routes, like Dawes Perception, you wrote about that. There was also,
I made up, Johnny, I didn't see Johnny do it, and I heard from Dave Towse how it was, but I know that route, so I can imagine how Johnny fell off that, and it will have been exactly like that. It can't be anything but that.
And interestingly, that's somebody else's experience. So you actually covered that beautifully, you know. But I think perhaps because you and Johnny are you know, really good mates now, and that really comes across. I think you're almost quite gripped writing that in a way.
Well, it's just a really nasty piece of work, that route. You can die really quite easily on that, you know.
Yeah.
So.
But I suppose there were other examples. The one in Scotland, the big cliff in Scotland.
Strone.
On Strone. There were some beautiful turns of phrase there. But obviously that stuck in your mind. That was a really significant...
I wrote a version of that quite soon after I did the route. Because I wrote the one after Indian Face, I wrote 3 weeks after, or 2 weeks or something after the ascent. And Strone I wrote a couple of months after, I think, when it was still. I took notes so I could remember parts of it, and then certain things were reminded to me by other people. So I added in details and things. But I do remember it. That's how it felt. And you know, capturing the cliff. The cliff's a really simple memory in your own mind, and the details were right, but the fall off the top and how the peg. I do remember the whole business of knocking myself off the cliff by putting the peg in.
Yeah.
That's kind of. I trust my recall on that.
That's the kind of thing that was searing in your memory, isn't it? Yeah.
And the other one that I do remember really well is One Step Beyond Direct. I can remember the whole business of trying that. I think it's one of those cases where I remember exactly how it felt to do it, but details were not very, probably time scrambled because I tried it on different days. So I'm not sure, I think I sort of put it together into one day really, because otherwise, you end up.
Yeah, but that's the interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, perhaps some people think that writing is an entirely literal business, as in not literal with a big L, in that you're literally putting down what happened. Sometimes it is mixing together those different experiences at different times on one climb and making a whole out of it. That it's almost like putting everything in the mixing bowl and just see what that cake looks like at the end of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you look at the cake and you think, well, that cake shouldn't have any cabbage in it really. You should probably take the cabbage out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do that, don't you?
Yeah. So you go back to it again. So it's almost like a process of building it slowly, of knowing that you're perhaps not. It's not reportage, is it? You're not flipping journalist.
No, not really.
This is your experience in its entirety.
The Americans reviewed the book recently. A guy called Jim Gilchrist in Rock and Ice, and was saying that he doesn't paint enough portraits of the individual people in it, and makes the. Also says it's all about me. Well, if you were to write about all those different people in detail, it literally would be 2,000 words long. It would lose any pace. You wouldn't know, who the person it was written about was. You'd end up. It's like
that seems a strange criticism.
What you decide. I thought it was a strange criticism because there's a lot of people in it. It's. But maybe they're not fleshed out enough. But my reason for discussing that is, you've got to lay the groundwork. You say it's not reportage, but you have to give people enough information who don't know about the scenarios to have some sort of context. But for people who already know about the context, you don't want it just to be the context and then one or two things they've not heard before, and then they move on to another subject, which is how most autobiographies are written. You read them, you think, well, I already knew all that. And I've got nothing from that, and it's finished. What actually went on? So
because
I tried to write, something that wasn't navel gazing, but also wasn't kind of like telling people that Ron climbed Lord of the Flies on the Cromlech. The Cromlech's a cliff in Clanberry's Pass on the right.
Or or writing about when you were in Books with Jerry, you do flesh Jerry. You make some lovely comments about Jerry. But it's science, If people want to know about Jerry, they read Jerry's book. This is about you. Yeah, so I was trying to let people know. I mean, I sort of use my memory as the arbiter of what went in the book. If it really hit my heart and I thought I really wanted to put it in there, then it went in. Some of the best stories that I could put in a book couldn't go in the book because they weren't relevant to the train of thought in the book. The book was, you became a miserable sod. Why was that? Did climbing cure you? Could it cure other people? Why is climbing so good? Why is British climbing so good? That was kind of the broad idea of the book. Was there almost a sense that the book took on a life of its own? I mean, this is something I can relate to, where you think, actually, I thought I'd put this, that and the other in there, and they don't go in because they don't fit.
They really don't fit, yeah. Some of the best things that I wrote didn't go in the book because they're just bloody irrelevant. I would say there's maybe three efforts. There's climb, experience what it's like to climb as me, and see how fast I think, or not, how robust my thinking is or not, how excitement involves me too quickly or allows me to stay in contact with what I'm doing. I wanted to talk about the people that I've treasured, and not in any particular depth because I really want to talk about all sorts of people. And I wanted to put it in a framework of history so that the context could be garnered it's kind of gutting when exactly what you try to achieve is exactly what somebody slags off, but never mind. It's going to happen though, isn't it?
It's going to happen.
And
I mean, well, that brings me to another question.
Which is an interesting thing to experience being criticised.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Is have you read all your? Because there's all these great stories about really good authors that never read my press. I never read the reviews and all that.
I have read them. Yeah.
And how did you take it?
Some of them are hilarious.
But did you find it hard not to get, or did you just get annoyed by them?
Well, I'm very it was very nice to have mostly good comments and some interesting things, like the chapters that people have liked have all been really different, which has been really gratifying. And quite a few people haven't liked it at all, or said it's kind of, I don't, if you meet somebody in the pub, you're not going to sit down with everybody and get on with them. I mean, I don't think I'd have got on with the person that I was when I was 16 particularly. I remember I didn't get on with him. Half the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, not liking yourself at any particular time. I mean, we all go through that in life at a point when you're just not happy with the person you are.
Yeah, there's no.
Well, all right, brings me on to another question then. How cathartic was it for you writing about your childhood, your formative years, which obviously was a pretty tough time for you?
It was just a strange sort of alienation.
Did it feel as though you were writing about someone you almost didn't know now, or just when you say an alienation from? That's a tough one. Sorry.
No, I'm just trying to answer that, Scott. I've got to kind of embody that.
Yeah.
No, I can remember how it was. I just remembered a certain part of me was trying to write the things that I wrote in the book. Then I realised that people around me didn't look upon life in the same way. There was a fundamental difference. It's a bit like Richard Dawkins and Rupert Sheldrake. They just don't bloody agree. It's not creationist v evolutionist. It's pan psychic against materialist.
Yeah.
The materialists, they can only get so far with what they're saying. And consciousness came from somewhere. If it comes from brains, well, how the hell can the brain make consciousness? It doesn't explain why we're conscious. It explains how the thing that feels consciousness does it. It doesn't explain why it's there to be made by anything. So, and that was kind of I noticed things when I was younger. Things that made me happy had nothing to do with what I could see everybody else was driving at. They'd turn left, and I really knew I was going to turn right from an early age. So, and it's been great, really, to sort of come all the way through, have my kind of cake and eat it. Not much of it, really. I didn't get much to eat much of my cake because it was, Lloyd's underwriting took that part of the cake, so we ended up with no money. The climbs and things were all a pain in the arse because so much lying and chipping, and I did all these climbs, and everybody sort of went and did limestone or started to top rope them all, or did them 15 years late when they're no longer hard in better gear or whatever. So there was never really that sort of fierce. It's a bit like Schumacher and Senna. They never got to race really. No. And nor did Clark and Stewart. Or things in life don't seem to turn out very interesting really. I don't think. I'm sort of overall. It'd be nice if they did a bit more.
Well, the thing is, I think what fascinates me is which bits of cake did you get to eat? Where were the moments? I think I know in that book when you were happy.
Stroan was bloody marvellous.
Yeah, I just knew that would come up because there was everything about that. Right people, right place, really crazy.
And it's really simple.
Target.
It's really what I like about it is simple, and but Pritch and I we had a great relationship in some ways.
Paul Pritchard,
yeah, we're really different people, but and there's something itchy and scratchy, but also something really open and really friendly between us. And we did have a real laugh. It was quite childish. It's a bit like we were 8-year-olds let out. Do you know what I mean? So,
fun.
So we find ourselves on this big cliff, and the rock is really great. We both had enthusiasm for that. And climbing together was fun because his skills his skills that were better than mine were good for both of us, and my skills that were better than his were good for both of us. So you get to forget yourself in that kind of way and just enjoy climbing on the crag. So that was one fantastic cake, and it was a lot of fun. There's masses of it. It was a real laugh.
Was there any nice bits of cake when you were on the grit? When you were trying all those...
It was the things I didn't do that were the best cakes, but I never quite did them. I was, Miles Gibson's just about to do the route into Lawrencefield, and I've got a bad arm, and it's sorting out my van, I'm publishing this book, I'm carrying 1.5 stone too much weight. All I want to do is to go climbing.
That's the wall on the that first little...
In the first bay, I did that in 2 overlapping sections in '93.
Yeah.
And...
Christ. 20 years ago, Johnny.
Was it 18 years ago, yeah. Oh yeah, 19 years ago. So it would have been nice to have had the scenario then. I pulled a tendon, then I lost money, then I want to try and sort myself out because I was smoking too much pot and I wasn't happy at all. Not because of the pot, but because that's why I was smoking the pot.
Wizard Ridge was, again...
Wizard Ridge was the other one, and also the Wall Ride of Ulysses. I did apart from the first 2 moves. In 3 sections.
So even though you failed on those, is it bittersweet that you at least you tried them, at least you got on?
Well, I did what Flipper Fitz did to routes like the Face and Stone Love and stuff. I did do the moves on them. I don't know if it's Stone Love, he did Stone Love, but he worked things. I worked them. I made them feasible in my own mind, and that was the time when I was climbing at my best, by far, really. They were. I was climbing 9A, but I didn't complete anything at that time, and that standard wasn't really. I don't really care what was going on. Although I am curious what was going on. I can't remember what was going on in '93. Is it Fred Ruling? And we already had 9A with Ben's Hubble. We had Action Direct.
Yeah, if Hubble was 9A, which a lot of people suggested now. Yeah,
I'm sure it was. I'm sure. It was obvious. It was harder at the time anyway.
Yeah.
But
and Fred Rolling had done stuff in.
People seem to think that he did some of those climbs, or he did those climbs. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, I was trying to, some of the things I learned early on were starting to become feasible, and then it all kind of blew up. I'd already had a great time anyway, but it's just. It'd be nice to think I could do it again, because I had a little spate of climbing well down in High Rocks recently, and I know that if I did the next, I got to 3rd out of 7 gears, I reckon, and if I'd got all the way to the 7th gear, I'd be doing things as hard as those things I just mentioned, and a couple of ones at High Rocks that I know will go.
Yeah, so you think there's still a couple of lines?
It'd be great, yeah. Oh, there's lots of things at High Rocks, yeah.
And they're futuristic, aren't they? I think when you look at some of the blanker sections on High Rocks, and Mother Nature doesn't seem to have quite finished her work.
No, yeah.
You go, damn, why did that stop there?
Yeah.
But there's still stuff there that you think you can link.
Yeah, no,
really work. If you're in 7th gear,
there's 2 routes that I've linked. But there's some 4th gear and 5th gear ones, but there's a couple that I need to be in 6th anyway. And in 7th there's some ludicrous things that really don't look climbable, that are possible to make feasible. The making feasible part of it's more interesting than the doing it, I find. It's a standard thing, isn't it?